We always imagined air superiority battles through the lens of theory, range, radar, missiles. But when the F-16s finally flew over Ukrainian skies, it was no longer theory. It was raw, screaming, supersonic truth. I was there, inside a Ukrainian command bunker in Kharkiv, watching the radar light up like a Christmas tree. F-16s, finally operational. And just 70 kilometers east, Su-35 scrambling out of Belgorod, heading straight for them. This wasn't an exercise. This was a real showdown, American engineering versus Russian brutality. NATO legacy versus Soviet lineage. And the world was about to learn what mattered most, specs, skill, or survival. The F-16s came in waves. After months of political wrangling and training Ukrainian pilots in Denmark and Arizona, Kiev had received its first batch, 8 multi-role fighters retrofitted with advanced AIM-120D AMRAAMs, AESA radars, and countermeasure systems. These weren't stock models. They were lean, lethal, and angry. On the other side of the battlefield, Russia had long relied on its air superiority king, the Su-35. Bigger, faster, and packing longer-range R-77-1 missiles, the Su-35 was feared. It had maneuverability the F-16 couldn't match and a radar range advantage. But it had one weakness: pilots. The Ukrainian Air Force had been forged in the fire of survival. By July 2025, its pilots had racked up hundreds of combat sorties under intense electronic warfare, SAM threats, and missile barrages. These weren't just men in cockpits. They were battle-born killers. I was part of a NATO advisory group embedded with the Ukrainian 14th Air Brigade. My job: monitor enemy air activity, assist with coordination, and, if needed, make calls no one wanted to make. On July 19th, at 3:42 a.m., the alert came in: Su-35's airborne, heading west. 3:45, Ukrainian F-16s scrambled out of Poltava. 3:58, interception vector confirmed. By 4:11, it had begun. A dance at 30,000 feet. Missiles locked, hearts racing, and history hanging in the balance. The two formations met over Sumy Oblast, night still hanging, but the horizon glowing with dawn. 4 Su-35s in wide spread, pushing high and fast. 4 Ukrainian F-16s, led by Captain Danilo, Falcon, Kamenko, came in low, radar silent. We listened in from the bunker. Radio chatter was tight, precise. These men weren't nervous. They were ready. 4:13 a.m. The Su-35s turned toward the F-16's predicted location, radar scanning aggressively. Their Urbis-E systems reached farther, and the Russians thought they had the drop. But Captain Kamenko had studied them. The Su-35 pilots liked to fire first, then disengage. He had a trick ready. Using ground-based NATO radar relays and data links, the Ukrainian F-16s received real-time vectors without lighting up their own systems. They flew like ghosts. Then came the first launch. 4:15 a.m. A Su-35 fired an R-77-1. High-speed, active radar homing. Deadly if it sees you. But the F-16s broke formation, one flaring hard, dragging the missile off course. That's when Kamenko struck. He pulled vertical, switched on his AESA radar just long enough to get lock-on, and fired an AIM-120D. The missile streaked skyward, closing fast. The Su-35 pilot never saw it. 4:17 a.m. One blip disappeared from radar. Splash 1, Kamenko whispered. Come. Deadly. But the fight wasn't over. Another Su-35 looped around and dove in close. It wanted a knife fight. The F-16 wasn't designed to outturn a Su-35 in a dogfight. The Russian pilot was betting on it. Kamenko ordered his wingman to go vertical while he went low. Terrain masking, hard G-turns. He pushed the F-16 to its absolute limits. His bones compressed. His vision tunneled. Behind him, the Su-35 chased relentlessly. Then, Kamenko triggered his countermeasures, flipped his bird into a hard barrel roll, and the Russian overshot. That's when the wingman came back around. Aim 9X. Heat-seeking. Close range. 4:21 a.m. Splash 2. We were cheering in the bunker, but the Russians weren't done. 2 Su-35s remained, and they were angry. They pulled high G loops, dodging missile locks. One launched a second R-77, scoring a near hit on a Ukrainian F-16. The aircraft limped back to base, leaking fuel, trailing smoke. The pilot ejected over friendly territory. That made it 3 F-16s against 2 Su-35s. But the Ukrainians adapted. They split wide and dragged the Russians across an invisible kill box, right into a trap. 4 months, the Ukrainians had prepared for this. NATO ISR assets had mapped the typical Russian engagement zone. They knew where the Su-35s would run when under pressure. So at 4:27 a.m., the F-16s baited them west, just enough to trigger the Patriot SAM battery on silent standby. One Su-35, unaware, pushed too far. 4:28 a.m. Patriot launch. Missile speed, Mach 4. Russian pilot tried to pull away. Too late. Boom. Massive radar flare. Blip gone. Splash 3. The last Su-35 bolted. No more bold moves, no more turns. It lit its burners and ran east. It didn't even try to fight. It knew the air belonged to someone else now. Kamenko gave chase but didn't fire. No need. The message was sent. By 4:31 a.m., the skies were quiet. 4 Su-35s entered. 1 limped home. 4 F-16s entered. 3 returned. A narrow tactical victory. But symbolically, a landslide. In Kharkiv, as dawn broke, the world changed. Russia no longer owned the air. By mid-morning, footage of the battle, radar trails, comm snippets, and even satellite imagery made it to Western media. 4 months, analysts argued over stats. F-16s were outdated, Su-35s had better speed, longer range. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was how they were used. The F-16s weren't supposed to win. But they did. Not because they were superior aircraft, but because Ukraine had adapted. They'd studied, trained, sacrificed. And when the moment came, they combined Western tech with Eastern grit and outflew the odds. Captain Kamenko became a legend. The surviving Su-35 pilot's voice, shaking, desperate, begging for cover, leaked on Russian telegram channels. The morale ripple was real. Russia pulled back its Su-35 operations in the northeast for 2 weeks. In that time, Ukraine re-established limited air cover for troop movements. For the first time in years, they had breathing room. Kamenko returned to base, kissed the scorched nose of his F-16, and radioed just one line. "We owned the morning." In the grand scheme of war, it was one skirmish. But every war turns on moments. This was one. And as the world watched, it wasn't just about the aircraft. It was about belief. Ukraine had just proven something priceless. That they could fly, fight, and win against one of the most advanced aircraft Russia could throw at them. The battlefield had changed. And so had the war.